Take it easy and solve the school lunch problem with SPAM. S-P-A-M.
こんにちは、タイガークローラジオ。You are listening now. Back J.
You are listening to Tiger Claw Radio. Number 1 in vintage computer and video game entertainment. And now your host, Critical Failure.
Oh yes. Welcome everybody to Tiger Claw Radio. This is episode 317. I am your host, Critical Failure. This is being recorded on January the 10th. It's Friday night. We're going to talk some video games. This past week was an enormous week for me. MAGFest happened. Yes, MAGFest 2020 was a big deal. And there was quite the gathering between myself, Hemrock, and Darabka, the gaming beast. The three of us got together IRL, and we went to the con, and we had a great time. Lots of video games were played, some video games were acquired, and some premium rock and roll was witnessed. All that and more. There's no time to waste. We're going to kick things off with a Vancast recorded before the con. Stick with us. Morning, everybody. Time for the Vancast. It is December 30th, 6:26 in the morning. It's late for me. This is late. I'm usually already at work by now. And let me tell you, this is the foggiest morning we've had in quite a while. It is like so foggy. You know the kind of day where you can see the headlight beams clearly? Can't see much else. Tell you what, they'd have no problem rendering this neighborhood on the PS1. Whew. Alright, off we go. I'm returning to work after a nice weekend. We had a couple days off in the middle of the week for Christmas. You know, we went back to work for Friday after Christmas. The one day in the office. Took care of business and then went home for the weekend. Now it's really back to work. Just for a couple of days. Hang on a second. Something's wrong with the rear windshield wiper. It goes crazy on me. Sometimes it starts going when it's not supposed to. I don't know. Yeah, so back to work for 2 days. I got Monday and Tuesday. After that, Wednesday we get off for New Year's Day. And then Thursday and Friday are MAGFest, baby. That's it. Thursday morning, I go down to the airport, pick up Hemrock, pick up Darabka, and then the trio of terror ride into the District of Columbia. It's going to be great, man. I'm looking forward to it. I've been playing some Resident Evil 2 Remake over the last week or so. Last couple days. I can only play it in short bursts, which is tough because it's one of these games where you got to make it to the checkpoint. You know what I'm saying? Resident Evil is usually like that. You got to get to... you got to make it to the typewriter. And then once you get to the typewriter, you can save and everything's fine. I got to be like 5 hours in by now. I don't know. I don't know how far into the game I am. It's weird because the Steam timer times the game, and then it also times itself during this, like when you go to the options menu in this particular game. So it has an internal timer, which most games don't seem to have anymore, but this one has one. So the Steam timer says I'm like 6 hours in, but the internal timer to the game says I'm like 3 hours in. Because I played it once, and then I restarted after an hour. Plus there was a long period of time of like optimizing the graphics the best I could. So if you've played through the game, the very last thing I did was Mr. X finally shows up for the first time. And let me tell you, what an impact Mr. X left. kept waking up last night. It's Mr. X, gotta run! Oh, it was great. Well, all right. I am pulling into the grocery store. This is like my last real chance to get hot tea before MAGFest. So I'm hoping they have my stuff. Please have my stuff. Butterscotch Blondie. Come on, it's my last chance. All right. I'll be right back. All right. How we doing? Beep, beep, beep. I get it. I don't even think they carry Butterscotch Blondie anymore. Tazo changed the way their tea boxes look. They're changing everything. I don't like change. It makes me upset and kind of angry and scared. And I want my favorite flavor of tea. Don't discontinue it. Come on now, you jerks. Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and go the back way. Just because. So we were talking about Resident Evil 2 and really getting to know that game for the first time, the remake. So Mr. X shows up to what felt like very little fanfare, which I kind of liked. He's got one moment in a cutscene. You're like an hour or two into the game, and you're having a cutscene, and he shows up for like a brief moment, like his hand comes onto the screen, and then leaves again. That's it. But I knew from the hype from the game. I knew all about it from the hype. Also, Resident Evil 2, we went over this last week. Played it a bunch when I was younger, when it came out on the PS1. So I knew all about Mr. X from those games. But when he finally walks onto the scene... Hold on a second, I gotta make a left turn here. When he finally walks onto the scene, it's this part where you're like... You've just come from the main area, where there's all this exploring. You've explored the main area up and down. You've been all around it. You got a detailed map of what's where. And then you get kind of sidetracked and isolated into this other little area, and you got to solve a puzzle to get back where you were. Well, you solve the puzzle, and just as you're about to step through the door back into the area that you're familiar with, out comes Mr. X. The moment where he walks on is brilliant. There's no huge cutscene. It doesn't take control away from the player at any moment, which I love. They did Mr. X's arrival so well in the Resident Evil 2 remake, so well. Even in the 90s game, the 1998 game, when Mr. X shows up on the scene, there's like a cutscene of like a canister being dropped from a helicopter, and Mr. X gets out of the canister. What? That raises so many questions. Who's dropping a tyrant from a helicopter? Who's driving that helicopter? Who's funding that helicopter? Very strange. Very strange choices they made. But the cutscene kind of, in my opinion, the arrival of the arch nemesis with a big cutscene has a counterintuitive nature. It tends to cut through the tension as opposed to building the tension. In most cases, you could point to exceptions to that rule, but the case I would point to most readily would be the T-Rex in the original Tomb Raider. This happened twice. The original Tomb Raider, there was a T-Rex moment, and they did it again in Anniversary. They recreated that scene. Now, in the original game, there was no fanfare, there was no cutscene, there was no warning. You walk out into this big open area, you've just gunned down like a smaller sort of raptor-type dinosaur, so you know dinosaurs are around. And then out of nowhere, and then here comes the T-Rex. Keystone moment in video game history. I was sitting with two of my brothers. All three of us jumped when that T-Rex came out. Now, they recreated this in Tomb Raider Anniversary. By the way, if you've never played Tomb Raider Anniversary, that's a good game. All right? It'll never be as good as the original to me, but it was still a good game. They did a good job. In that game, they ruined that whole moment because, first of all, instead of like a regular enemy, it became a boss battle, and you couldn't just open fire on it until it was dead. You had to learn the gimmick, which involved like quick time events, and secondly, huge cutscene. Here's the dinosaur roar. We're gonna give you back control in just a minute, but first you're gonna look at this dinosaur roar. Doodly doo. It cuts the tension right in half. You can't build tension that way. Think back to Silent Hill 2. Now, I haven't played Silent Hill 2 in many years. It's been at least 5 years. Did Pyramid Head have a fanfare like that? Because I'm thinking no. I don't know those games inside and out, but I'm pretty sure Pyramid Head did not have any kind of fanfare in Silent Hill 2. I'd have to go back and check on that, though. That's a game I should play. Oh, man. Silent Hill 2 on the PlayStation 2. I've had my copy forever, since I was a teenager. I was probably 17, maybe, when I got that game. Still got it. Never beat it. I can't beat it. I'm sorry. I can't do it. Hang on a second. Yeah, I think we're in good shape now. It's really foggy out. It's pretty bananas how little visibility there is. That's good. Good. Yeah, we're doing okay. Okay, yeah, so so Silent Hill 2. I'm thinking about it now, and I don't really remember much about that game at all. So now I'm kind of keen to go back and play it again. I can tell you that's not going to happen until after MAGFest, bare minimum. And then once MAGFest ends, I'm probably going to leave with like a handful of new games that I'm interested in. Regardless of what I actually purchase, even if I'm not buying anything, there's always like, oh, I played this in the arcade and that made me think of this, and that's what I want to get and play. You don't make any video game plans for after the con. You go to the con and then you leave everything after the con wide open. And that's how you do it. Alright, how we doing now? 12 minutes in? Not too bad. Still playing the SNK Classics collection. I played Akari Warriors a couple more times, and I don't know, I have my gripes with that game. It definitely isn't perfect. There's a moment in Akari Warriors where you're crawling through the jungle, and there's like a creek in the middle, and then there's like bridges that go across the creek, and eventually the bridges and the land just all disappear, and it just leaves the creek, and then you realize, oh, okay, I can wade in the water, and it's not a big deal. So you get in the water, and then these dark blue spots start showing up, and it's the soldiers that have been submerged in the water, so you can't shoot them. And they start coming up on you. And then once they pop out of the water, you got like 1 second to shoot them. You don't have time to line up your gun at all. You got to shoot them the second they pop out of the water. Otherwise, they'll kill you. The second they pop out. Oh, excuse me. And even with the rewind feature, I was like, all right, these are cheap deaths. We'll just rewind through it. They can't. I couldn't get past it. It was too much. It was too cheap. That was really disappointing. So I remember playing Akari Warriors 2, Victory Road on the NES when I was very young. And that game stands out as probably the weirdest game of my youth, Akari Warriors 2. Because it wasn't like a terrible game. Because there were games like, I don't know. It had all the things I would have expected, at least as a youth. It had all the things I would have expected from like a really good game. You know, at that time, the greatest game in the world was Contra, right? Had a lot of the same stuff Contra had. 2 people could play it at once. There was shooting. You could pick up different guns. But what a weird game. The monsters were weird. The guns were weird. There were these unexplained, portals that would just show up and they'd suck you in like a vortex. And then you would go to this like really bizarre sort of shooting gallery type game. Ultra weird. The word weird does not begin to describe the experience of Akari Warriors 2 on the NES. And then, oh man, reset Akari Warriors and just let it sit on the title screen. You know how most games, they have like a little like cutscene. It's rudimentary because it's the NES, but there will be some sort of little cutscene in a lot of cases. And when there isn't a cutscene, maybe there'll be like a demo. That was a big one. It would cut to like a handful of seconds of gameplay to try and simulate the whole attract mode feel of the arcades. Well, guess what? Oh, hang on, I'm getting a text. I can't read it now. I'm in the middle of like the foggiest day that's been in years. You're gonna have to wait on that one, sweetheart. Right, Akari Warriors 2, super bizarre game. Super bizarre, and I also remember it being very hard. I haven't played it since I got this SNK collection. I haven't played it since then, but I remember it being very hard. One of the things I like about the SNK collection is that you can jump regions, right? You got the arcade version and you get the console version. And then before you launch the game, you can press Y on the controller and it'll switch between American and Japanese. That's really cool. One of the cliche stories, FYI for your informations, the American rental market made things difficult. So they had to make games more difficult in America because the kids would rent them and beat them in a weekend. Consequently, the Japanese versions of some games are much easier than they are in America. Yes, this is very true. So, I might want to play Akari Warriors 2, the Japanese version, just in case. I played Akari Warriors 3 for the first time, which I'd never played. Akari Warriors 1 and 2 are these games where it's like, the format is very simple, They're distinct and they're weird, but you're essentially playing a top-down 8-directional game where you're running and shooting, and there's a lot of games like it. Guerrilla War, I think, is another really good example. Another SNK game that's on the collection. But it's that kind of game, But when I played Akari Warriors 3, you don't have a gun. At least not in the beginning. So you're just running around like karate chopping the other soldiers, which is an interesting direction to take. Well, it is what it is. I enjoyed it. I think Akari Warriors 3 is a good-looking game. I didn't play it enough to really develop an opinion on the gameplay. I thought the punching and kicking is an interesting approach. You'll probably pick up a gun later on in the game. You know how it is. Start barefisted, but then you start picking up items. Yeah, that's actually pretty neat. All right, how we doing now? Okay, we're 18 minutes in, getting ready to cross it over to 19 minutes. I don't know how this is going to work. Last year I took MAGFest off, right? So this year, this is Monday. MAGFest comes at the end of the week. So I guess I would use this recording the following week. I'm not sure. I'm going to do the best I can. But for now, for safety's sake, I'm going to send you guys back to the studio. I'll see you there. All right, boys and girls, we're back in the studio. There is no time to waste. So before we move on, I want to take just a minute to thank the sponsors. You know, these guys, I say that I fall into the trap of saying the same thing every week. They give their resources to make sure we're coming back every week. But the thing is, it's not a routine thing they're doing. They're doing something very special and deserves something special. So what I offer them is a bit of recognition here on Tiger Claw Radio. A little bit of shine. So I read their names off in what can seem like routine, but is in fact a hall of distinguished gentlemen. And they are Hemrock, Sendu, Tecmo Balls, Darabka, Konstantin Kelman, and Balzac. Thank you guys very much. I thoroughly appreciate your support from the bottom, the very bottom, the Marianas Trench of my heart. Thanks for hanging out, and I hope you're enjoying the party. I also provide early access to the show as soon as it gets done. I like to get it up Friday, but oftentimes it's Saturday night, and then for everybody else it goes up Monday. So thanks for hanging out, and let's get on with it. After that, last Vancast that you guys heard, we went to the con. And I got a couple recordings, which is a first, because usually when I go to the con, I put TCR and I put TCTV aside. I get a little kind of mixed bag footage, but nothing special. I mostly just work on taking it in. But I got a couple of things. To start with, was this sort of weird recording that only lasted a few seconds that I got on bar night. We went to the Hemrock and the Gaming Beast and I. We all went to the Cadillac Ranch. Cadillac Ranch, of course, being the bar that I had the meetup with Vintage Video Game Geek and Games 31 and Arcade Impossible and Taylor's Game Shelf, all them guys, and NES Complex some years ago. So it was cool to be back there again with two other internet personalities that I highly respect. We went to the bar and we were goofing around, and Sean and I recorded this. Okay, so this is the Vancast. We are at, where are we? We're at the bar. We're at the bar now.
Yeah, we are the bar. There we go. That's the bar cast now.
Yep. So that's it. That was that was really it. I was drinking iced tea that night, I swear. It was just unsweetened iced tea. And then the next recording is I think the next, was it the next morning? I think that night was a very late night. And then the next morning, Sean and I were sitting at the table at the Airbnb, and Hemrock was like frantically trying to get stuff together. And we made our little recording, so here it is.
Recording.
This is the serial cast.
Hey, what's up?
So I'm here with Hemrock and Darabka. It is 9:49 in the morning on what, Saturday? Saturday morning?
Saturday? Yep.
At MAGFest, and Sean is eating cereal, and I'm making it difficult for him.
They're great.
No.
I'll throw around the candy that I brought.
We are going to see the Proto Men tonight, and we can't agree on anything else we're going to do for the day.
I mean, I don't know. Like, the panels, I'm really not interested in so far. Like, that wasn't one where I was like, I gotta go to that.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
The panels are weird because... Oh, phone's ringing. How to build an arcade cabinet event reminder. Alright.
Well, that might be cool.
It depends on what they're telling you. You know what I mean? If it's like, hey, here's some basic woodworking, and then you get a thing, and then here's the components.
Mm-hmm.
But I kind of have a feeling it's going to be like, so this is called a Raspberry Pi, and this is a TV set.
Yeah.
And you put the TV set on a wooden shelf.
That's amazing. I might as well just play my main games.
This was really good, by the way.
What? Oh yeah, those are good. Yeah. Did I tell you what the name is?
Mm-mm.
Take Two, Nimm zwei in German.
Oh.
It's a very old candy, but very popular. Although, when I ate it, it wasn't. This is the newer version because the other version had also filling in it, but it was more hard candy, more traditional. So this is good, but I don't like the old version more.
This tastes like a Starburst kind of, but it has like a
Yeah,
center to it.
it's like a Starburst. Yeah. The funny thing is, I got that candy. I don't know. It wasn't that weird, but it was a little bit. There was an older taxi driver when he took me in Germany.
Mm-hmm.
He told me he was a taxi driver for 40 years, so he's a pretty old guy, but pretty nice. And we were just talking and having a good time. And then when I left, he's like, "Oh yeah, here's some candy," you know, like again, you know.
Here's some candy. Please don't use Uber.
Exactly. Yeah, maybe that's it. You know, that could have been it. Yeah.
Is Uber prominent in Germany?
I don't know, maybe because I haven't used it yet, but it could be like the most popular thing.
It's everywhere here, and I haven't used it either. The only time I've ever been in an Uber is with him.
Oh,
That's the only time.
I remember that.
This almond milk, it's okay, but no. Exciting talking.
Yeah.
We played. There was a multiplayer museum. There was also a computer museum and everything. It's pretty sweet. And we played Quake in multiplayer.
Yes, Quake in multiplayer.
And that was pretty sweet.
Which this year they have. So the Quake in multiplayer is pretty much identical to the previous several years. I have a photo of like the computer museum from like maybe 4 years ago where they had iMacs chained together, and that was their Quake LAN, but they were down the entire time I was there.
iMacs? What?
You know what an iMac is?
Oh yeah, an iMac.
It's a Macintosh that came out in the...
I know an iMac, yeah.
You plug it in, you hook up the phone, and then you're done. Hey, there's no step 3. Yeah, so those. But it never worked. So the Quake has been around for a while, but...
Who would play Quake on an iMac?
I would. If they had it set up. Still Quake, right?
True, yeah.
I guess your mouse would just have the one button. I've never used an iMac, but...
Oh my god, no, that's so bad.
Macs always had the one button, I think, right?
Yeah. And I hated that always. It's like Ultra AIDS.
Do they still? Okay, so
no, maybe they don't have. I don't know. Last time I used a Mac. That's what I'm eating. Last time I used a Mac was in college. You know? And I can see that was pretty good for the most part, but the one button thing just annoyed me. It was over designed, form over function. Now maybe that's different, you know, but I haven't seen an actual desktop computer from Apple today. Most people just run around with the iPad.
Yeah, same.
There probably is. You know, I'm actually quite sure because.
Do you know what makes me think there is? The fact that like TF2 is available for Mac.
Also that like a lot of movie editing and sound stuff is made on Macs. So.
Yeah, we had a Mac in our house growing up, but it was manufactured in the 80s.
You know what? I'm talking about. Wait, was it? Oh yeah, in the 80s. Okay.
So that it doesn't tell us much.
Anyway, I like MAGFest. It's been pretty cool. The shop area is really cool if you want to buy some old video games. Prices are not really that great. It's like a eBay stuff, but some are okay, I guess.
You know what's funny? Every time I come down here, I always have this thought: hey, wouldn't it be just better to save up like $100 and blow it all on eBay in an afternoon? But there's something about when you're right in front of the games. I don't know. You got to be careful about that.
You don't have to wait for it. You can just buy it. It's there. You know.
Yeah. But ironically, I do have to wait because I don't have an Atari with me, so I still have to wait till I get back home.
Yeah. I bought Mortal Kombat 3 for the Super Nintendo, but I don't. I have to still get a. I have to get a emulation machine on Super Nintendo to play it on. I just wanted to have it.
Yeah.
You know? I mean, when I buy a Super Nintendo, then I need to have a converter. Although an emulation machine usually can run all the different SNES variations.
Yeah. I would like to look at the import SNES games again, because
The Japanese.
yeah, I did that
They were
thing
pretty
where
cool, and they were cheaper. You could get already pretty decent games.
Yeah.
Definitely the Famicom games. They were like $10, and there were some really good games there.
well, Famicom games I have a bunch of. I mean, the really good ones.
Oh yeah, but you
like-
got a Famicom, yeah.
I have a Famiclone. I have some sort of Famicom device, the same one you sent me.
Yep.
Um,
Oh right, yeah.
yeah, and I do have some really good games for it. That's a weird thing because the Famicom to me is now becoming like the economical option if you're gonna get physical games.
Yeah. Honestly, I've gotten, like, Swingle gifted me 2 Famicom games, Dark Half and Secret of Mana, Super Famicom games, and they were both boxed, especially Dark Half. The box was like perfect, like it would be new,
Yeah.
manual, everything, and it was like under $5 because the Japanese, I don't know, there's like, I'm sure there's people who like to collect old games, but it's not such a big thing,
I don't think many Westerners can read it. So anything that requires text, I think, is going to be.
Well, there's one option, because Dark Half has been fan translated completely, because I played it through, but on an emulator. If I want to play it and actually understand the thing again, then one of the ways you could do it, there's a, Retro Freak, it's like a Retron 3, it's like a multi-game emulation machine, and you can put in like cartridges, and you can apply patches,
Yeah.
and so that's
pretty
the way.
cool.
That's the closest way I could play it legit, with understanding it in English, because so, or it's actually, I think you could also put any patch on, even if it's a hack.
Yeah.
Like, where it changes the levels, like what you showed me. Like
That would be cool because there's some good ones out there.
Yeah, I haven't dived too much in good ROM hacks, but other than translations, but I'd be interested, yeah.
I took the time to get my Super Nintendo to work with imports. Super Nintendos famously have little tabs.
Yeah, exactly.
That's the only region locking is physical tabs, and I broke them off with needle nose pliers. But the only actual imports I have are pachinko games. I just have 2 like $1 pachinko games hanging around the house.
That's yeah. I know you talk about the pachinko games. I don't know, like there would be other cool ones, but they're probably expensive. I don't know. Although you could get some of the Japanese games that are not as expensive,
I feel like now that I can play imports, I should get a real import.
Yeah.
I don't know. The big ticket item for me is usually the vinyl, and I haven't been impressed.
No.
Not at all. Last couple years, there's a group called Bit Brigade.
Yeah.
That had really good records. I got a couple from them, and I think if the Proto Men are playing Saturday night, they must have a table somewhere.
Yeah.
They had awesome records as well. Yeah, I don't know. We'll see. I haven't been to the chip space yet this year, and they had some stuff last year. We'll see.
I gotta say, the collection of arcade and pinball machines was very impressive. Really cool.
Yeah.
And now they had the really old arcade machines that in the separate arcade museum, which was really neat. They had like both the Tron games. They had although they had some really old ones downstairs. They had Tempest.
Yeah.
That's a fucking old one.
I would be interested in seeing numbers because it's kind of hard to tell, just like casually coming and playing the games, if they have more or less than in previous years.
Yeah.
But it would be cool if the reason why those are in a separate room is because the actual arcade is expanding.
Yeah.
That would be neat.
One thing that, like, there was some good beat 'em ups, like the 4-player ones, but there's some other ones I was kind of missing. That could have been a little bit more. they're bad dudes, but like I personally would have liked some Golden Axe or some Mutation Nation, some of the weirder beat 'em ups, which are really fun.
Yeah, okay, I could see that.
But you know, it was like they had already so many. You know, like I don't know. Like now it doesn't, since it's like free play. I don't know. Like if somebody buys and puts it out to play for people, I don't know if there's a rights thing going on. I don't know. Probably not.
That's kind of hard to say. I don't know. I really don't know how what they go through to make the games show up. I know they go through companies.
Well, then it's a different thing, I guess.
There's like arcade provider companies that they cut deals with for a lot of the machines to show up. But I really don't know how it works.
Yeah. Oh yeah, we played one of the biggest, if not the biggest, pinball table, Hercules. That one was fucking crazy.
Oh, hang on one second. Let me pause that real quick.
Yeah,
there we go. We're running again.
Yeah.
No, and also, some of the arcade machines are personal property.
Yeah.
People bring to the con in exchange for passes.
Really?
Things like that, yeah.
Okay. That's neat. I didn't know about that.
Yeah. It is neat. There's the collectors and stuff.
I was disappointed there's no pachinko. Last couple of years there's been pachinko and I was excited to play it again.
Curious.
Yeah.
You know what's the funny thing I found out with pinball machines historically? That they're more related originally to pachinko. They didn't have the paddles until in the 50s. There was the first one with paddles. Because the ball would just run. You would just put in the money. Mm-hmm. There has been since the late 19th century. And then the ball would come and fall down.
Yeah.
In different ways. You know?
I don't know much about the history of pinball, but having looked it up a little bit, I know it's very weird. It's like it's not recognizable from its original form.
Yeah, they're more related to pachinko machines, you know. And when in the 50s there was the first one with paddles, but it was like really tiny paddles.
Yeah.
And then it evolved.
All right, so let's do this. I think we're like 13 minutes in. I'm gonna go get dressed, and we can start making a move to get down to the convention center.
Yep.
Agreed.
Back again in the studio. You know what's funny is I really like that recording because those moments where it's early in the morning and you're just kind of getting your stuff on vacation, you know, and you got the cereal and everybody's just kind of hanging out doing their own thing. Those are like some of my favorite moments. It's weird because like all the crazy stuff we did, all the video games we played, we saw the Proto Men, we saw Scatoon Network, Descendants of Edric, we saw the ending of Power Glove, saw a lot of stuff. Chilling out in the Airbnb with my oldest bros on the internet, you know, is probably going to be one of the most vivid and clear and enduring memories of that weekend. So, Hemrock, here's to you and your dishes, and Sean, here's to your cereal. May it be great. And now here we are, back again in Panzer Studios. I have the Panzer reassembled. It came with us. We played Alpha Centauri on it. And I got 2 van casts from the subsequent week at work. Just standard van casts. Because remember, we took a bye week. I did this last year too. I took 1 week off just to do MAGFest because I didn't really see any other way to do it. As it is, I'm barely getting TCR in when it gets done. So we're going to play these 2 van casts, and then we'll see what we got in the fail bag. Probably just a couple comments. I don't think it's much. And then we'll hang it up. All right? You guys ready? I know it's a long one, and I'm more or less, I just foregoed music altogether this week. So my apologies. I wanted to make sure it got out because I missed it last week. But with that, we are back from MAGFest. We're going to the van. Let's go.
Morning, everybody. It's Tuesday. It's time for the Vancast. It is 6:17 in the morning, 32 degrees outside, nice and cold on this January morning. Back from MAGFest 2020. That's right, we did it. I went to MAGFest, and it was everything I'd hoped it'd be. Darabka, the gaming beast, flew in from Germany. We had Hemrock fly in from the internet, and the three of us had a blast. Let's see. We did okay. But before we get to MAGFest, just a quick mention before I forget: the Steam Lunar Sale is the dates have been released, and it's very soon. It's happening in January, so a couple of weeks, and we got another big sale. Last year, this is the year of the rat, I guess. So I don't really know how the Chinese zodiac works. So I guess it's not at the same time every year. But last year, the lunar sale was a big deal. We had I got a lot of stuff out of that sale. It was a lot of fun. So we'll see. There's a reason I wanted to mention the sale first, because the Christmas sale just ended. It ended while I was at MAGFest. So the very first day, Thursday, Hemrock and I were sitting in a panel they were talking about Gaming Center CX, the show. I'd never really seen that show. I know it's a thing. I've heard people talk about it. Never watched it. Now, I had planned to make one more purchase before the sale ended. I was going to get the Castlevania collection. I was also going to get another Castlevania game on top of that, one of the newer ones. When it goes on sale, I don't know what it's called. I want to say Lords of Shadow or something like that, but it's one of the 3D-ish ones, and when it goes on sale, it tends to go down to like $3.75. So this is about a little less than $14 for the two games. And we were sitting in this panel, and I was like, oh, let me push that sale through so I can get those two games. And the Steam winter sale had just ended. This was at 1:24 p.m. and the sale ended at 1 p.m. California-based company. They have it set everything flips over at 10 in the morning. And so because of the 3-hour difference, 1 o'clock in the afternoon is when Steam sales end. So we saw that panel. That was pretty fun. What are some other highlights? I saw the Proto Men play, which was great. They were really good, but they took a long time to get started. And it was way packed. So I ended up ducking out early to try and avoid the crowds. Oh, there's my phone. I'm ringing now. All right, boys and girls, let me pause this thing in just a second here so I can run into the grocery store. And then we will return and discuss more MAGFest here in just a second. All right, here we go. Back in the saddle again. So I did the MAGFest. Played some games. That was pretty great. What are some of the highlights? We stayed at this Airbnb, which was awesome. It was really awesome because I was kind of down on it. It's the first time in a lot of years I didn't stay on site. Usually I have a hotel room in the National Harbor area so I can walk to the convention center. So we were just like 20 minutes out. We would wake up in the morning, drive down there, jam all day. We lasted about, on average, about 12 hours. And then we'd go back to the room and sleep. And that worked out really well, like way better than I thought it would. So that's an awesome way to save some money doing the MAGFest, which is pretty cool. I did my first official Magic the Gathering draft, which was great because I've been playing Magic since like the mid '90s, and it was the very first game, like official sanctioned game that I had. My name was in the books because I signed up one night with nothing to do, just poking around on the internet, and they were like, "Yeah, we were able to find you." So that was cool. So I did that and got blown out hard. I got to play some really cool pinball tables, which was fun. This is the first year I've really been able to dig into the pinball as much as I could. Because in past years, they've only had like a handful of pinball tables, and they're usually all taken by people who are interested in their tournaments. So that was nice to get to try some of that. I played all the way through Bad Dudes, which is pretty awesome, with Darabka. It's pretty great. This is the first year in several years I didn't play Dodonpachi. That's usually like a yearly thing for me. I'll sit down in a candy cab, play some Dodonpachi, and kind of check that one off the list. Didn't do it this year, but I'm okay with that. I think because I've done it so many times at this point, I'll do it next year, and that'll be good enough. Who else did we see apart from the Proto-Men? We saw the Descendants of Edric. They were pretty cool. We saw the tail end of Power Glove, which was way better than I thought it was going to be. So I think Power Glove has 3 new fans because we all loved him. Especially Sean. Sean's like the heavy metal guy. So Sean being into them is like the heavy metal seal of quality. You know? So that was really cool. But yeah, it was a good time, man. There were a lot of cool people, and I had a lot of fun. I'm having a lot more fun these years, I think, than in previous years when I would just go by myself, like when I first started going. I will say this, though. In terms of music, it was kind of flipped from last year. Last year, I think the chiptunes were amazing, and then all the main stage concerts were not great. That's like when Mega Ran came and stuff. And it was like a bunch of rappers. Oh, that's fun. Okay, it's not really my thing. This year it was flipped. I didn't think the chiptunes were that great. There was like, we saw one guy that was awesome, and then everybody else is kind of meh. But then the main stage concerts were great. We got to see Ska Tune Network, which was really cool. That's another one that was way better than I thought it would be. It's like a 10-piece ska band playing Saturday morning cartoon show themes. Yeah, it was really cool. I was big into ska as a teenager, so I would have been all about it back then. So that's pretty cool. It makes me want to dust off my Mustard Plug albums and my Real Big Fish albums. You know, my Mighty Mighty Boss Tones albums, all that stuff. Spin some of those CDs again before they just entirely wither away to disc rot. In terms of acquisitions, I got a couple of things. Oh, is that ice? I think there might be ice on the ground. I picked up a small handful of Atari games. Hang on. Okay, buddy, go ahead and go. Not too many. I couldn't even tell you what they were. They're still in a plastic bag up in my place. I know I got Popeye. That was the one I was most excited about. I got Popeye and Air Sea Battle, and then like a couple others. Just looking at the boxes, trying to find stuff I didn't have. I also picked up some big box PC games, which was amazing. Duravka bought me a copy of MDK, which was something he had brought with him from Germany. So it's a German copy of MDK, which is super awesome. Because I have 2 other German big box PC games, and they're like the crowns of my collection, along with Civilization 2. Which is super awesome. And then at the con, we found a dealer that was actually selling, a couple of dealers actually were selling big box PC games, which I had never seen before. Never. One guy had like a few high-end big box PC games, like Doom 2 for like $150 in a big box PC game. And they had one of the Might and Magic games, one of the World of Zine Might and Magic games they had for $60. That was like the high-end guy. And then there was like a mid-tier guy who had them from 10 to 30. And some of the games he had that I didn't get. I know he had, I want to say Enforcer, but that's not what it's called. Sean, what's the name of that game called? It's the first-person shooter where you can press like the number key and go back and forth between first and third-person shooting. Starts with an E, and it's like mostly time-based, where you flip the switch and then you have 30 seconds to get to the door that it opens. I wish in Enforcer, something like that. I can't remember what it's called. But they had that for $30. And they had Lords of Magic, which was really cool. I passed on it just because I do have this CD, and my Lords of Magic phase kind of came to a close. but they had that for $10. And Sean got me a copy of Hidden and Dangerous, which was amazing. Hidden and Dangerous I bought when it was brand new, and it's the only game in my collection that I had when I was 17 that I now have reacquired, which is very sweet. It's very awesome. So he got me that, and also H-Zone, which is like a bunch of levels for Hexen and Heretic. It's one of these unofficial expansions. There's a lot of them. They had a master levels for Quake unofficial expansion, but I didn't pick that up because I saw it there the first day and I was like, I don't know, we'll come back and see. And then when I came back, it was gone. So I should have jumped on that. I was a little bit gun shy because I bought that Quake expansion big box like last year, maybe 2 years ago, and it turned out to be garbage. So I got some big box PC games. Picked up a box copy of Street Fighter 2 Special Edition for the Sega Genesis. Very nice condition with clamshell case and everything. And that was like $17. So it's pretty cool. I didn't get any big I didn't get any vinyl. It was the first year in like 3 years I didn't get any vinyl. I saw some there, but I didn't see any I was interested in. I never saw a Proto Men merch table, which kind of sucked, because I'm sure they would have had something for me. Proto Men released Act 2 on vinyl, I think, this past year, early last year, so it's been a while, and that has since sold out on their website. I don't have Act 2, and I don't have A Night of Queen, so those are 2 records from them I don't have. I would have loved to have gotten. Yeah, so that's pretty sweet. I had a great time, and now I'm back. This is the first full work week in quite a while, because we had New Year's, and before that we had Christmas and whatnot, and then before that was like vacation season. Right. So yeah, so I am back to work, slugging it out. Yesterday was the big return to work, and I just did that ride, was just quiet because I was just fried from MAGFest. My legs are still hurting. I was exhausted. Yeah, so that's it. I finished that, and now it's back to the routine. So big thanks to everybody who made it to MAGFest. I hope you guys all had a great time. Oh yes, almost forgot. I got to meet Duke from the Cartridge Club. I ran into him in the vendors area, which was super awesome. Just a real quick meeting, just shook his hand. I kind of wish I took a picture with him. I didn't do that. But Duke, if you're out there, man, I hope things are going well for you and your family. Hope you had a good time, and maybe I'll run into you next year. Let's see, how we doing? 13 minutes. I think with that, I'm going to send you guys back to the studio, because I know I'm entering this week. I took a bye week from TCR last week, and so I'm entering this week already with a ton of audio. So I know this is going to run way over time. So all right, I will see you guys back in the studio.
All right, back again in the studio. I'm exhausted just listening to that. We got one more, and then we'll see what's going on with the fail bag. All right, you guys ready? This next one's 19 minutes and 17 seconds. So strap in. This one's really about video games, I think. And let's see what we got. You're listening to Tiger Claw Radio, episode 317.
Morning, everybody. It's Thursday. It's time for the Vancast. My goodness, 6:24 in the morning, 24 degrees out on this super frosty January morning. It's 2020! 2020! I remember when I was a kid, I used to watch this show. I can't remember what it was called, like Future Cop, something like that, Cyber Cop, I don't know. It was a dude in a white suit who was supposed to be like a police officer from 2020, and he would do all kinds of amazing police officer stuff. Hang on 1 second, garage door won't close. My remote for the garage door is dying. Sometimes it works, but this morning is not one of those times. So I have to get out and do it manually. There we go. Alright. right, quite a bit to talk about. If you're still listening at this point, bravo, because I know this episode is going to go super long. And you know what? I can't save any of the footage or any of the audio and use it next week because it doesn't work that way. By next week, it'll all be old and unusable. Everyone will have moved on to other things. It's not going to do me any good. So, it's this week or bust. Give me a second here, pulling out of the old driveway. And away we go. Alright. So, let's see, we got Commodore 64, we got Resident Evil 2, and chiptunes. I think those are the three things I wanted to go over this morning. Let's start with the Commodore 64. So while I was at MAGFest, I went to the computer museum. That was one of the things I did. I do it every year. I love the computer museum. It's an amazing thing. It's one of the things that MAGFest has that no other convention has, at least as far as I know. In past years, they've had a computer museum that's had... it started out like as a little banquet table in the middle of the arcade that just had like maybe 10 old computers. Then they got their own room, and then they did that for a couple years, and then the last couple years they've had a Quake LAN, which has been like one of the highlights of the convention for me. Not last year, but the year before, when I still hadn't really done the chiptunes, the Quake LAN was like the best thing at MAGFest. Well, this year, the computer museum had grown so much that they split it into 3 rooms. They had the computer museum, they had the arcade museum, which was some of the vintage arcade games that they pulled out of the arcade, like the big arcade, and then they had the multiplayer museum. So in the multiplayer museum, it was essentially a second computer museum, but they had a bunch of rare multiplayer experiences put together. And among them was the Quake LAN. They made a duplicate of the Quake LAN that was running Unreal Tournament. Now, I didn't play it, which I regret, but they did have Unreal Tournament in a 6-person LAN. They had Unreal Gold, Unreal 99. They had that in a LAN. They had Warcraft 2 in a LAN. I got to play that a couple of times, and I got blown out really hard. And man, it hurt. Like, I get blown out playing Quake every once in a while. And you sort of pick yourself up, and you say, all right, good game, and then you move on. But for something about a real-time strategy game, man, the RTS losses for me are incredibly difficult. I get really bitter about it. It's like, hey, man, I was building a base. You weren't invited in here. You get out of here. This is supposed to be SimCity. So I did that a couple times, lost real bad, got real mad about it. They had Diablo in a LAN as well, but I couldn't quite figure it out. A few of the computers were like, you could change the game, but you had to understand the LAN setup, and I didn't really know how it worked, because there was like, one game was the full actual game, and then the other computers were like spawn versions of the game, which couldn't do anything. And the whole idea behind a spawn version was the actual game would run the host, and all the spawn was able to do was connect to that host. And that way you could have multiple copies. You could have like 4 people on different computers playing the same copy of a game. I never understood that. I never heard of that before. I always thought of playing a LAN as like, think of it like the original Game Boy, right? You could get, you could get 2 people together on a cable or 4 people together on a hub, but everybody had to have a copy of that game, whatever it may be. That's kind of in my head the way I always pictured it, but apparently there was another way to do it, so that was pretty neat. I learned something, which is really awesome. So the computer museum was great. Not just the multiplayer, but in the actual computer museum. There was an MS-DOS computer that I came across right after we saw the Proto Man. I went to, let's see, I went to the computer museum and I found a computer that was stuck in the MS-DOS prompt. So I started looking around the MS-DOS prompt. I grew up on MS-DOS. I know how this stuff works. I found a couple of folders and I was able to get into Space Quest. So here I am playing Space Quest on what looks like an old 386 machine, but I didn't quite know how to check the specs on it. So 386, running Space Quest 1, and it was like a weird version of Space Quest 1. In Space Quest 1, you land on a desert planet, and the sky is purple. Don't know why the sky is purple. It just is. Well, in this version of the game, the sky was red. And I got the distinct impression that this version of the game was the way it was designed to be played. And what I was playing was like some weird amalgamation of how the game translated to my version of MS-DOS or something. I don't know. But everywhere you look is the purple sky version. You go buy it on Steam, you're going to get purple sky. If you open up a copy of DOSBox and you go to an abandonware site and you download it and set it up, you're going to get purple sky. So I have no idea how they set it up on this computer so that the sky was red. Maybe the monitor was off. I don't know. But it looked really cool, and I took a picture of it with my phone. But while I was in the computer museum, and this is the reason why I wanted to bring this up, I fell in love with the Commodore 64. Now, I'd been to this computer museum before. I'd seen the Commodore 64 there before, but it's never quite been like this. They're dope. They're super dope machines. Now, I've known it's kind of expensive to get yourself one, like an actual Commodore 64. It's like a couple $100 between, I would say like between $125 to like $200 to get yourself like an authentic Commodore 64. That's what I gather over the last like week of internet searching. So a little bit up there. There's clone machines, right? There's the Commodore 64 Mini, which came out like a couple years back. That thing's like $40, I think, right now. Where it's like the little Commodore box where you can't actually press the buttons, and it's got like a bunch of games loaded on it already, but then you can connect a keyboard and play that way. That thing looks okay, but then Darabka told me while we were out there they're making like a full-size version. So this is what I found out. They put out the Commodore 64 Mini, and the full-size version they're going to call the Commodore 64 Maxi, which is ridiculous. But that's what they called it. I saw the 8-bit guy open one up, and it's essentially like a Commodore 64 shell, a full-size one with USB hubs instead of like the old serial ports it used to have. And when you open it up, it's like in one corner of the machine is a tiny little single-board computer, almost like a Raspberry Pi, and that's what it is. And then under the keyboard is a gigantic metal plate just to give it some weight. So that's the full-size Commodore 64 clone that they're making. It's not available in the US right now, only in Europe. Just came out this past December, and it's January now, so it's been out less than a month. They're charging 104 pounds for it, Great British pounds. So I checked the conversion to US dollars. So it's about a little less than $150 for this thing. Trouble is, you go on Amazon and you try and order one, they're not going to send it to the US because the package is too big, or for whatever reason. Shipping to the United States is unavailable. So unless you know somebody who knows somebody who knows somebody who knows somebody, then you're not going to get one of these things in the US, not unless they make a full US release. So here I am at home, interested in the Commodore 64 after MAGFest. I went and got myself an emulator, started grabbing some Commodore 64 games off some various websites, and last night and this morning I sat down and played Commodore 64. It was great. I played Portal. You guys know Portal from the Valve game, the Half-Life 2 engine? Yeah, they rebuilt that in Commodore 64, and it's really good. I sat down with my son, and he was exposed to the Commodore 64 probably for the first time. I know he was at the Computer Museum a couple years back, but he didn't remember what a C64 was, so he saw Portal on the C64, and he, without being prompted, was able to single out the music, the SID sound chip music. He was like, this is really good. It's like, yeah, it is. And we played Portal on the Commodore 64, and it was really good. This morning I got up and I played Super Hexagon on the Commodore 64. Except the Commodore 64 version is called Tiny Hexagon. But it's by Terry Cavanaugh and a couple other people. So Super Hexagon is on the C64. Those two games were amazing. They were so good. Now, I know the Commodore 64's got a lot of garbage games on it. You know, every system's got its garbage games. For every one game that's amazing, there's going to be 10 plus garbage games, and that's the way it is. C64 is no exception. But I don't know, man. I got super interested. So I spent some time emulating, which has been fun. I might do some Commodore 64 videos to show off some of the C64 games. You know, I don't know. We'll see. It feels like it's something I could do that doesn't take a lot of effort. That could show off something really cool. So that's the Commodore 64. I've never used one in my childhood. I always used the Apple II. That was always what was available to me, right? I remember when I was a kid in school, the computer labs were filled with Apple IIs. So that's really what I remember. The computer labs were filled with Apple IIs, and we never had a Commodore. My dad had an IBM machine. IBM running MS-DOS. That's what we had at home. My sister had a Macintosh, but it was a Macintosh that was manufactured in the 80s. So it's like a first-run Macintosh. So, very different. All right, so what else happened? Resident Evil 2, that was another thing that I wanted to go over. I beat Resident Evil 2 yesterday, which I didn't think was going to happen. I played that game all the way to the end. I did it using Leon's story. So I played his A story, I guess, which is what they used to call it on the PlayStation 1 version. See, the way Resident Evil 2 works is the game is split up into two sides. You got Leon and you got Claire. And you pick one of the two, and when you beat the game, then the other one opens up in sort of a hard mode. And when you beat that hard mode, you get the true ending. That's the way Resident Evil 2 worked. So you have to beat it twice, and once on hard mode. So I beat the game with Leon, and I saw his ending, and then I started playing through with Claire on the second run version, which is what they call it in this new game. And I gotta say, I didn't play much second run, but there's a lot fewer save spots, like a lot fewer. So that's kind of interesting. As far as I'm concerned, I cannot add it to my completed games list, not until I beat it with Claire. Once I've beaten it on second run mode and see the real ending, then it gets marked as finished. Let's see. I'm at like 11 hours, 12 hours in Resident Evil 2. So far, I gotta say, I really recommend it. It's surprisingly scalable as well. Like, it does not look very good on my computer. I don't know if I've talked about this in previous weeks, but it does run really well. Like, I think it runs better than Resident Evil 7 ran. And that game ran okay. I was able to play that one all the way through to the end. So to run better than that is saying something, in my opinion. All right, so that's Resident Evil 2, and then we got chiptunes. That's what's left. Okay, so here's the story. While we were in MAGFest, we were at the room. I think this was like Friday night. Friday night, we stayed up really late. We played some Magic cards. We drafted our decks, rather. We didn't get to play until later, but we held a draft that Hemrock engineered. we ended up with 3 boxes of 1,000 commons apiece. And then we'd take piles of common cards out and we would draft piles from those. So in the end, we had drafted decks of strictly common cards selected at random. It's fun. It's a neat idea. And then we also played Sid Meier's Alpha Centauri. The 3 of us have a long-running play-by-email game that I've mentioned on the phone before here on the podcast. So it was neat that just by chance we all happened to get together. So we in the same room. So we played some Alpha Centauri and pushed our game forward by like 2 months, which was great. It was really awesome. And then towards the end of the night, I popped open Famine Tracker. So you got to understand, this is probably like 12:30 in the morning. We did the drafting. This is after 12 hours of running around at MAGFest. We're tired. Popped open Famine Tracker. And I'm just clicking around. And this was one of those nights, man, where I had a halfway decent demo that just sort of came out of me. And that was it. I was in. I was working with Famine Tracker again. The next morning, I tried to expand on it, but nothing really came. I couldn't really make anything work. And so I let it breathe a little bit. And this morning, I sat down with Famine Tracker. That's what I did this morning before I left the house. Opened up Famine Tracker, and I worked with it. And a second track, I was able to just build from the ground up. Like, it felt like it was super fast. Like one of those moments where everything just sort of wrote itself. It was pretty amazing. So I've got 2 working demos in Famine Tracker as of right now, which is pretty cool, man. When Famine Tracker is going well, it goes really, really well. I think a good sounding Famine Tracker song is hard to beat. You don't have as many channels or as many voices as you would in like a clone tracker, like Milky Tracker or Open Tracker or something like that. So there are limitations, but you can hide those limitations if you're crafty. So if I remember when I'm pasting all this together this Friday, I'll try and throw those demos in there so you can hear them, and we'll see how it goes. But that felt good. It felt good to create again. How are we doing? 18 minutes? We're 18 minutes in on a Vancast that's going to show up at the latter half of a really long show. This is where I feel like nobody's listening at this point. You never can tell, but nobody's listening. Although I'm sure Mecha Menace will be able to find the time signature of when I farted in the middle of the Vancast and hope nobody heard it. But we'll see how it goes. All right, how we doing? I think with that, I'm going to send you guys back to the studio, and I will see you there.
Back again in the studio, as promised. Let's get a quick sample of the chiptunes I've been working on. Not much. These are not completed songs, but you can hear the demo. This is a MAGFest Jam session. I wrote MAGFest Jam Session 1 because I was hoping to do it a bunch of times, but I just got the 1. It's a little unpolished jingle. Let's give it a listen. And the next one, entitled Post Mag Jam. So these are both songs without titles. The next one I did after I got home, I got the Panzer set back up again. A little better in my opinion, but stick with me. I'd like to get those polished up for submission to the winter chip that is open right now. I don't see them going anywhere because they're not really winter themed. You know, the Battle of the Bits has these competitions that are themed. So you can make a good song, but if it's outside the theme, good luck. But yeah, I think that those not so bad. They need some work, of course, not done yet, but yeah, you know, I'm liking where they're going. Good old Famitrackers being good to me still, believe it or not. All right, boys and girls, as promised, it's time for the fail bag. Small operation, just you, just me, just a few of you out there. Let's have a talk, all right? Anything you want to know? Any questions you have? You want to throw shade my way? By all means, let's have it. So the best way to get in touch with me is over at YouTube, just to leave a comment. But if you know me personally, feel free to send me an email and just be clear about what you're okay with me reading on the internet. First one comes from Desm101. He put one that drew quite a lot of sub comments. So Desm writes, "Hey CF, kudos on keeping up with TCR through the holidays. Question for you on the next show. What's your take on Mike Matai? Mike Matai, you don't really beat the game tweet fiasco. In general, I agree to a point, especially growing up with those old hard as nails games. But to present it outwardly, that must conform to your standard, is maybe going too far, and why others are trashing him for the tweet. I think it's totally subjective. While I value having the skills to play through something tough like Gradius, I'm not about to shun less skilled gamers." Click to read more, who are just trying their hand at these older titles. All right, let's talk about this for a while. Good old Mike Matai. Mike Matai wishes he could be at the center of a controversy. For those of you who don't know what he's talking about, Mike Matai from Cinemassacre, right-hand man to James Rolfe and the AVGN. By the way, I don't want to understate his contribution to that show, because they do cons, and I watched one of their cons that they did on YouTube, and they basically explained that in the early days, all of the video game hardware and know-how all came from Mike Matai, especially early on. So I don't want to understate his contribution just because he was an off-camera guy for a real long time. But I think it doesn't really matter what he thinks, because when I sit down to play video games, he's not invited. Do you know what I mean? I'll put it this way. My 4th grade teacher, whose name I can't remember, if she had an opinion on how I choose to play video games, it wouldn't matter. Does it matter what Mike Matai thinks? All right, but let's examine his opinion. He's got a point that if you shouldn't brag if you had to use the old cheat devices. But on the other hand, we use those devices to get around an obsolete design philosophy, right? In order to make games last longer, they would make them harder, which is not how they make games last longer now. Now, if a game's too hard, just play something better, you know? So, for example, when I bought the SNK collection on Steam has a rewind feature. And I'm able to use that to get further in Ikari Warriors than I would have on my own. And the reason why is because they know the average gamer now is not going to spend the hundreds of hours of memorizing where every bullet is just to overcome the stupid mechanic of having to go way back every time. There's no need for that now. Now, I also think if you can beat that in 1 credit without using save states or rewind features, I do think that is an impressive feat, right? And there is a separation there. All right, so I beat Mega Man 1 on the NES, but I used save states. So I realize that's not, if someone can beat Mega Man 1 without save states, they have achieved a higher Gaymore level than I have. But to say I haven't beat the game, sorry, you're incorrect. I have, and you know what? Get mad. Because in the 80s, if that stuff was around, you would have used it. Do you know how I know you would have used it? Because everybody knew the 30-man trick in Contra. Nobody played Contra without the 30-man trick. Even if you could beat Contra without the 30-man trick, like my older brother could do it, and he bragged about it for years. I can beat Contra without the 30-man trick. I did it. Even he used the 30-man trick sometimes when he just wanted to chill out and have fun. So don't give me any of that. I beat, and those are feasible games. Mega Man and Contra. They're very difficult, but they're absolutely feasible. Try playing Bump and Jump without using save states. Bump and Jump on the NES. No way. I beat that game with save states, and I gotta say, it's a worthwhile experience to do so. So don't shut save states out as a viable way to enjoy video games. I think that's doing a disservice to yourself. I don't know. I think it's an interesting point of conversation. I have actually really enjoyed going back and forth, hearing people talk about this. But I think the way he presented it was super arrogant because he's super arrogant. What are you going to do? I don't know. Death Adder writes, no trolling, but didn't Mike Matai drunkenly upload a picture of his arcade stick on Twitter at one point? Yeah, he's always looked like he was just using some sort of substance in every video. I'm pretty sure his opinions are invalid. I don't know about that. But I certainly appreciate your input, Death Adder. Always good to hear from you, brother. Especially when you're talking about famous people's genitals. Desm101 writes, at Death Adder, oh yeah, dude is totally off the deep end. I follow a Reddit called The Cinemassacre Truth, which details a lot of his rapidly declining mental state. Lol. I'm not saying Mike is making any great points. He comes across as a crappy gatekeeper. But in the broader topic, I have some interesting responses on Twitter. So that I'm curious about where some other gamers stand on the topic. I think you got it exactly, Desmond. It is a polarizing topic, right? I say, and most people say, use the save states, use the rewind feature, play the game how you want to play the game. It's just really a matter of bragging rights. Can you brag that you beat the game afterwards? I don't know. I think you can. But you just should have an asterisk at it. Do you know what I'm saying? I think I might have even said this in one of the Vancasts. If Barry Bonds can say he had that home run title after using all those steroids, then I can say I beat Bump and Jump on the NES. I'm sorry, I can say it. Yes, I used save states. Did you beat Bump and Jump on the NES? Did you? I'll tell you what, if you can beat Bump and Jump on the NES without save states, I will herald you as a better man. Until then, let me enjoy my silver award. Okay? Alright. I don't know anything about Mike Matai's personal problems, though. I never really considered him as a potential heavy drug user until you mentioned it. So I don't really know anything about that. Mechamanus writes, "What is this fiasco? It's also best not to judge someone without knowing what's actually up. He's always had that look. Maybe he will get some recognition now that he did that Freddie Mercury movie." See what you did? Making fun of old Mike Matai. Making pretend that he's like the guy from Mr. Robot. That's pretty good. I like that. How are we sounding? I was checking the levels just now. It looked like I was peaking pretty hard. Sorry about that. Desm writes, he posted a tweet saying, "If you use the Switch rewind feature to finish a game, you did by no means beat that dang game." A bunch of people got mad at him, and there was a ton of different responses. Yeah, to be fair, I had to look it up. I didn't know what... When I read the initial comment from Desm, I had no idea what he was talking about. What you were talking about. Yeah. Yeah, so much for a controversial, I guess. Mechamanus writes, in the same sense of how the game was released, I don't know what that means. I know that's one of those things where it's like people, I don't know what BITD means, and I don't have the energy to Google it, but that's what he writes here. Yeah, I agree with that. Not even an easy mode for old games. Not even an easy mode for old games that have save states. It's like using Game Genie back then for Infinite Lives. People got mad, actually angry over that. They aren't being truthful with themselves. If they want to twist the truth, they could say they never played through using save states. Yeah, I don't know why people got upset. That seems like a weird thing to get upset over. Maybe it's like, I spent all this time achieving something, and it turns out I didn't have to because I could just use a code, and that's why I'm really angry. Tessim101 writes, yeah, that's pretty much my thoughts as well. Since we grew up playing these games, we feel like it's cheating to use rewind and save states. It's not like you really accomplished much. I don't know. We're talking about video game achievements, guys. We're talking about what games you can say you beat. And we're talking about doing it on actual hardware for like the NES and stuff too, right? I mean, the initial tweet was talking about the Switch, wasn't it? How much can... I can say that I beat Star Tropics, you know? It doesn't even have to be true. I did it with save states, and my older brother did it legit. I can say I did it. Who's going to check me on it? Do you know what I mean? It's a jerk move because you guys know me, and I'm not a liar. But let's say we were complete strangers, okay? You remember the soundbite that I played earlier of Sean and I at the bar with Hemrock? He was there too, but he didn't say anything into the mic. If I had just turned over to Hemrock, who wasn't paying attention in that moment, and I was like, "Hey, you know what? I once beat Super C on the NES with 1 credit." Who's to say I didn't? I feel like you could break that one wide open just by asking me what the ending was like and me not knowing. But don't argue over bragging rights. What a dumb thing to argue over. Argue over the awesome time you had. That's what you should argue over. That's where the real value is. Let me tell you about the times that I got 4 people together on a multi-tap to play Super Spike V-Ball. Yeah, can you say you did that? If you can, then I'm lifting my cup of hot tea to you, brother. Is that it? Is that the end of my fail bag? No, it isn't. Okay. We got one from Death Adder who writes, I've been playing Castlevania Symphony of the Night for the first time, or at least for more than like an hour. All this time I thought it was just a meme made by the alt PlayStation media. But it's really a thing of beauty. My game of the year for 2019. That's awesome, dude. I still have not given that a fair shake. The last Castlevania game I really gave a try was Castlevania Bloodlines on the Sega Genesis, which I played for the first time as an adult. It's been several years now, but that happened. And when I did that, I fell in love with it. It was so, so good. It's not even the best Castlevania game, but I really enjoyed it. So I'm glad you get to experience something like that. I wanted to get the Castlevania collection. I mean, I told that story already. We'll pick it up. We'll get him next time. Mission failed. We'll get him next time. The lunar sale is just around the corner. I'll get it then. But I'm glad you got to experience that. Nekomanis responds, you ever played any handheld Castlevanias? It's a good question. Castlevania Adventure on the original Game Boy is another one I want to experience again. Death Adder, not for real, but there was a Castlevania Anniversary Collection out now with some old handheld games on it, including one called Kid Dracula that was a cutesy look. I might check that collection out at some point. Mecha Menace, I'd pass on Kid Dracula unless you saw the cartridge cheap since it resells high. I think it's a good rep for presentation, but it's really simple, more so than a Kirby game. I was alluding to the Metroid-like Castlevania games on the GBA and the DS. If you like Symphony of the Night, you might want to check out those. And he has a good point. These were like games made in the wake of Symphony of the Night. When they really started using that term Metroidvania, or you remember, you know that term, and I hate that term. It's so stupid. But that's what they're talking about. So yeah, I don't know. Those games might be really good. I haven't played them either. Mecha Menace, but I'm certainly game. Mecha Menace has a comment of his own. He writes, there was 2 releases of QFG 1 EGA, and then Quest for Glory. There were 2 releases of Quest for Glory, one EGA and later a VGA with some changes. I eventually played through the VGA version and I loved it just as much as my EGA PC speaker version, which was included in the collection you downloaded. I've never played it, but there's a fan-released modernish port of the second game which has graphics and sounds similar to the VGA QFG1. If you get into QFG, you probably can still download that easily. Activision probably doesn't care enough to C&D on purpose to avoid YouTube censorship. The fan works. Seriously, Nintendo, and he uses some naughty words to describe his discontent with Nintendo. Yeah, man. Let's talk about Quest for Glory 1, whether it's EGA or VGA. I'm honestly not sure, but I can tell you that the games from Sierra that I was familiar with as a child, Police Quest, Space Quest, and King's Quest, all of those games did exactly what you're describing, where they were initially released with EGA and a parser. They were then re-released later. The first game was re-released with like a VGA cleanup. So when that Quest for Glory game came out, the VGA version, it was probably like a series. They probably did Space Quest, Police Quest, King's Quest, Quest for Glory, all of those like in the same year or two. Just all the original games coming out on EGA. And it's probably, if you were like a lifelong Sierra fan, that's probably a really magical time. Now the Police Quest collection, when I bought the physical copy as a teenager, it came with both. So I believe that's what the Steam version has. I'm going to try it right now. Quest for Glory. We're going to mute this so that it doesn't kill your ears, and we're going to go ahead and give it a try right now. I believe it comes with both, but you got to kind of fish around. So when I launch Quest for Glory, it gives me Quest for Glory, so you want to be a hero, 2, Trial by Fire, 3, Wages of War, 4, Shadows of Darkness, 5, Dragonfire. So if we just click launch for the original, it's probably going to give me the EGA original version. And then what's very likely, oh yeah, when I launch number 1, it gives me a sub menu, one of those MS-DOS text menus that says launch the VGA version, the default, or the EGA version, Heroes Quest. Yeah, so let's do 2, Heroes Quest. And it's loading, and there you go. This is, there's the please do not make illegal copies of the game. And there we go. Yeah, so to answer your question, it has both. Alright, and give me a second to get out of here. From the Village of Spielberg. Yeah, this is a guy who liked movies. Start new hero. Things like, there we go. That got me out. Alright. And thus, we've made it to the end. A big thanks to everybody for giving me a week off so I could go to the con. And thank you for joining me. If you're listening to this and you're an hour and 35 minutes in, my goodness, you deserve a gold star. You deserve a gold star for spending some of your time, some of our limited, precious time that we have here hanging out, talking about video games, and conventions, and music, and all the other things. Thank you so much for hanging out here.